The Leak Mound Interpretive Trail is sponsored by the Federal Highway Administration, the Georgia Department of Transportation, and the University of West Georgia.
Hi, and welcome to another Leak Mounds Interpretive Trail podcast. If you're following along in the trail, this podcast corresponds to the Pieces of the Past panel. I'm Marcus Toft.
And I'm Jennifer Teeter.
Jennifer, what do we mean by pieces of the past?
Well, in this case we're talking about pottery, or pieces of pottery that might have been found at an archaeological site.
So do archaeologists have a term that they use for a piece of pottery?
Yeah, sometimes it can be shards or sherds, but in the southeast we prefer sherds.
Okay, so in this podcast we'll refer to a piece of pottery as a sherd. Now, pottery is one of the most useful clues that an archaeologist can find at a site as far as how much an artifact can tell them about what happened at that site.
Yeah, and I think they found a lot of pottery sherds at the leak site, which really helped them interpret what happened there.
Yeah, because if archaeologists know what to look for, the pottery sherds that they find can tell them where the sherds were made, when they were made, or even who made them.
Yeah, beginning from the process that the leak site inhabitants would have used to make a pot, we can start looking at the clay and show when and where it was produced.
But how can clay tell us that?
So there's Georgia red clay, and color will tell us some difference. And also for time and place, you can look at the feeling of the pot. If it's grittier, if it's smoother, that can really tell you when and where it was made. And also there are some scientific processes that I'm not so familiar with that could tell you.
Yeah, I think archaeologists and scientists can analyze the clay, what it's made of, like the minerals in it.
Exactly. You can trace to where the clay was originally found, like what river, and match mineral contents.
Right. And because not every pot was made exactly the same, archaeologists can look at the form of the vessels or the sherds, if that's all they have, to find out what that pot was used for, and then if they find that out, it could tell them something about the people who used it.
Exactly. Like the shape would suggest what or how it was used, or maybe how it was made too. And then like you said, they don't always find an entire vessel intact. That's pretty rare. But they can use the sherds, and the sherds that they do find, they can sometimes piece it back together and figure out what it was like.
Yeah, I've seen where sherds have been pieced back together before in museums or exhibits, even in archaeology labs. And they take the pieces, and I don't really know how they find pieces and mash them up like that, because sometimes, like at the leak site, they found hundreds of thousands of sherds, so it seems pretty incredible that they can match them up. But they can match them up and match the designs and the shape and try and figure out more what the vessel looked like. Yeah,
it seems like a really arduous task, but it really helps archaeologists get a better idea of what the decoration was like.
So how important were decorations for learning about these people who made the pots?
Well, it can tell you if it was a different society that made it, or it can tell you about their worldview.
Does that mean that different societies then use different decorations?
Exactly, they really didn't. And at the leak site, there are a lot of different types of pottery that were found, and there are different decorations on them.
Were the different designs that archaeologists have found at the leak site, were they all made at the site, or did some come from different places?
A little bit of both, I think. The Swift Creek pottery was made at the leak site, but it was also made by people at other sites. And other types of pottery could have been traded with people at the leak site, or it could have just been different time periods that they made them.
Okay. From all the different types of decorations that archaeologists found at the leak site, I think there were two forms that were more dominant than the rest. And using those two forms, which corresponded to time periods, archaeologists could kind of divide the leak site into the periods of occupation.
Yeah, just a second ago I mentioned Swift Creek pottery, which they are known for Swift Creek complicated stamp. And then there's also a predominant amount of Cartersville simple stamped. And
for references, we're talking about these types of pottery, but it's kind of hard to describe them. So we do have videos and pictures on the website, and then there's pictures on the panels too that you can kind of get an idea what these look like.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Cartersville pottery, which is named after the Cartersville town, makes sense. Archaeologists recognize that type of pottery as being made during the earlier years of the leak site, and then the Swift Creek was made in the later years. But Jennifer, in both of these, and there's Cartersville simple stamped and Swift Creek complicated stamped. What does the word stamped mean when it comes to decorations?
Well, it's the way that they decorated their pottery. They would take a wooden paddle or a paddle wrapped in cord, and they would use it like a stamp, like we use stamps today. And while the pot was still wet, they would slap the pot with it, and it would impress a design on the wet clay. And for the listeners, on the website, you can see pictures of different sherds and decorations that were on them, and videos of the process that people at the leak site would have used to make their pottery.
So that explains what stamping means, but what about the simple and complicated? Was something that's simple stamped, it was just easier to do, and then complicated was more of a elaborate process?
Well, actually, the terms simple and complicated don't refer to the stamping process. They refer to the design that was placed onto the paddle and then stamped into the pot.
Oh, okay. So a simple stamp was just a more basic decoration, and the complicated stamp was more complicated.
Design-wise, yes.
Okay.
And on the website there is a video about the evolution of pottery design in the Southeast.
And the designs on the Swift Creek, because those are the more complicated designs, to me they kind of maybe look like animals or flowers. Some almost look like people.
Exactly. They might be representative. We talked before about how designs could tell us about American Indian worldview, and some archaeologists disagree on what the Swift Creek designs tell us. Some believe that they represent how American Indians thought the cosmos were arranged, like they related it back to their mythology.
Yeah, and other archaeologists think that instead of relating to mythology, the designs are actually more representative of people, of real people.
Yeah, like the pot could have represented the essence of a person.
Right, so if you had... and part of the argument about pots representing someone's essence is that, like, say there's an American Indian who couldn't travel somewhere to a ceremony or a festival or even, like, a funeral, then instead of that person going, they would make a pot with his likeness impressed on it, and then that pot would go in his place and represent him at that event or whatever it was.
Exactly. But, of course, you can't really tell which of these worldviews the pots represented.
Right.
Exactly, but, of course, we'll never really know which of these worldviews the pots represent. So, if you'd like more information on Swift Creek pottery, check out The Swift Creek Gift, Vessel Exchange on the Atlantic Coast by Neil J. Wallace.
Or check out A World Engraved, Archaeology of the Swift Creek Culture, edited by Mark Williams and Daniel Elliott.
And as always, thanks for listening to another Leak Mounds Interpretive Trail podcast. The Leak Mounds Interpretive Trail project was done in partnership with the City of Cartersville and Bartow County. Music by Tommy Wildcat.